Despite the number of big-name manufacturers that have left Chicago in recent years, the area remains one of the country's manufacturing centers. From toys and candy to auto and machine parts, there are still a lot of products made right here. Add to that the construction and service industries, and there seems to be plenty of work to go around. But who's getting the mostly low-wage jobs? Some say immigrant workers are taking jobs away from people born in the United States. Others argue that immigrants fill the jobs Americans don't want. Here's Eddie Arruza with tonight's installment of our year-long Chicago Matters series, Beyond Borders.
The wait is on at one of the hundreds of day labor agencies throughout the Chicago area. Every day, thousands of men and women come to these agencies in the hopes of getting a job that may last only a day, or with luck, perhaps years. The majority of the unskilled laborers that show up are Latino or African American, and just who gets sent out to work frequently depends on the integrity of the agency.
The agencies prescribe to favoritism, so it's not like you're the first person to arrive, so you're guaranteed to go out to work. A lot of it is, if you bring, do a favor for the dispatcher, or, other types of favoritism. There's a preference for young women, for example, to go to work.
Why is that?
Because the supervisors at the factories ask for young women.
Increasingly, many low-wage jobs are going to those who are desperate for any kind of work. And among the most desperate are the growing number of both legal and illegal immigrants. Chicago native David Thomas has been a day laborer for almost 20 years. These days, he says, it's tougher for him to land a job.
The Mexicans are getting all the jobs right now because they are accepting lower wages and they're coming to work constantly, putting up with conditions that they shouldn't.
Analita Guerrero is neither Mexican nor undocumented. She's a legal U.S. resident from Panama. And for the past year and a half, she's worked at a paper manufacturing plant in downtown Chicago. She says it's a fact that immigrant workers will tolerate more than their American counterparts.
The agency, they most prefer the Latinos or Hispanic because, they go to everywhere that they send them. They don't say no. And it's a minimum wage, of course, and sometimes it's very far, a difficult job, sometimes very hard, dirty workplace, but the Latino go over there, they don't say no.
Labor activists say there is some truth to the perception that immigrants are taking jobs that Americans don't want, but the reason the jobs aren't wanted is misunderstood.
The African-American, the U.S.-born workers stand up for their rights, and they don't put up with, dangerous working conditions, for example. The African-Americans or U.S.-born, they won't go back to those type of working conditions. For minimum wage, to be working in unsafe working conditions, to lose a finger, they're not going to do it. They're not as desperate as the immigrant-born. So that's where some of the tension and the conflict is created.
60-year-old Don Winston has put in a lifetime of hard work, rarely making more than minimum wage. He says one thing he will not do to earn a living is be exploited.
This instance of jobs that we don't want, which one of us is going to go into those fruit fields and is going to go into those low-wage slave labor shops and be paid less than minimum wage or minimum wage and do the job as well?
Civil rights activist James Tindwa says African Americans are unfairly being used as political fodder in the debate over immigration reform.
Groups in this country that have traditionally not really cared that much about the plight of low-wage workers, people on the conservative side who now have a newfound interest in the plight of low-wage black workers, for example, are using, they're using black people now, black workers, to really advance an anti-immigrant agenda. If they truly care about the plight of African-American workers, they should be raising the minimum wage. They should be supporting living wage protocols that we've been pushing across the country.
But if there are tensions between U.S.-born and immigrant workers, it's not readily evident among the job seekers at the day labor agencies. UIC professor Nick Theodore says that's because the current labor market has room for most all who want to work.
In the research we have done, we have found very little head-to-head competition, between immigrants and undocumented immigrants and native-born U.S. workers. The low-wage labor market really is very balkanized. It has a lot of segments in it, and we see very little competition, for instance, between former welfare recipients and undocumented immigrants.
That's not to say there's a level playing field among unskilled workers. Union organizers say it's not unusual for some employers to take advantage of their immigrant workers' legal status.
When an employer threatens immigrant workers, or just frankly when they threaten Latino workers, usually that's the target audience, it's really, they go after everybody and just create a fear. And so even if you're documented, which in a lot of cases people are, there's still that fear. Even if you're a temporary or permanent resident, there's still fear of somehow losing that and somehow being deported.
As more American companies compete in the global economy, the pressure is on not only to remain profitable, but in some cases to stay in business. And increasingly, say some observers, it's the immigrant labor force that's shouldering the burden.
We have a lot of industries that are under intense price competition, and one route for competitiveness among some employers has been to turn to a workforce that doesn't have a lot of rights in this country because of their undocumented status, and is reluctant to speak up because of their dire need for work. When you have a large group of undocumented immigrants who fear retaliation and must deal with exploitation, that draws down, it is a drag on wages and working conditions of all low-wage workers.
But in the absence of a national consensus on immigration reform, both immigrant and native-born unskilled workers have few to no options in what they have to accept in order to feed their families and pay their bills. For Chicago Tonight, I'm Eddie Arruza.